Friends, welcome to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. It was about 8 p.m. on Wednesday. My wife Tracy often worked late on Wednesdays, and I always made plans for a fun and relaxing evening. Today was special. I took out a pizza with meat from Papa John's, got a couple of bottles of beer, then turned on the Cubs game and started relaxing with my favorite drink. I had 2 more bottles in the small fridge next to me and 6 more in the fridge in the kitchen. It should be a good evening. My wife came around 10, took a quick shower, and by about 11 we went to bed. Wednesday was a quiet night at the Avondales. However, this phone call was supposed to ruin my enjoyment. I just knew it. But being the responsible guy that I am, I answered it anyway. It turns out it was Sherry Tremaine, the wife of Tracy's boss, Jacques, who was practically hysterical. It looks like Jacques had a heart attack while he was working with Tracy, my wife, who called 911 and paramedics took him to the hospital in poor condition. Sherry told me that Tracy went with Jacques in the ambulance and she would need to be taken home, as Sherry intended to stay as long as Jacques needed her. I told her I was on my way and wished Jacques all the best. Jacques has been Tracy's boss for 22 years. She started working for his software company right out of college, and was now, so to speak, his right-hand man, as well as his working wife. I had already met Tracy when she went to work for Jacques, and over the years our families often happened to do something together. He seemed like a good guy. Tracy said he was an amazing boss, and he also took good care of Tracy in the payroll department. Jacques, a French citizen, is 10 years older than Tracy and me at 55. He's a handsome guy who trains, and he has a decent body for a guy his age. He's a dynamic personality, the center of attention in the crowd. Both men and women are attracted to him. I understand that God has a plan for all of us, no matter how well we take care of ourselves. But I have to admit that I was surprised that Jacques had a heart attack. I parked my car in the visitor's parking lot next to the emergency room, went in and asked about Jacques. I told the nurse at the counter that I was the husband of the woman who arrived with him, and I was also looking for her. As I said that, I noticed a couple of paramedics on my right. One gently patted the other's forearm and whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "Cook is here. I wonder what's going to happen now." Although he was looking in my direction, I had no idea what he was talking about. I didn't know who Cook was, and I wasn't really worried about it. I was just looking for Tracy. 5 minutes later, Tracy and Sherry left the room, tears streaming down both their faces. They noticed me and came towards me, and we hugged in a group hug. "He's dead, Rick," Tracy wailed faintly as we hugged. "He died a few minutes ago. The doctor said it was a massive heart attack." I was stunned by the silence as the 3 of us hugged in the hallway, both women sobbing loudly. Sherry, also a French citizen, has been married to Jacques for 35 years. They got married when they were both 20 years old, and came to this country when Jacques got a job at an American software company at the dawn of the computer era. They have a daughter, Amy, who is 3 years older than my daughter, Allison, who is 18, and the girls are so similar that they can be sisters. Jacques cherished Amy. It's going to be very hard for her, I thought to myself. Just at that moment, one of the paramedics came up to me and asked if I was Tracy's husband. I said yes, and he handed me Tracy's purse, saying she had left it in the ambulance when they arrived at the hospital. I separated myself from the crying women and, taking my purse in my left hand, thanked him and shook his right hand with mine. Then I started wrapping the dangling strap around my purse to get it out of the way, when I thought I saw a bra tucked into the middle compartment. It didn't make any sense to me, so I took another look, and of course there was a bra in the purse. It was so crazy when the women left the room crying that I never got a good look at Tracy. I noticed that she was indeed braless. This is weird, I thought to myself. I do not know how long we stayed in the hospital with Sherry before she decided that she needed to leave. Amy was going to return from university in the morning, and Sherry decided that she needed to get some sleep. I dropped Sherry off at her house and then drove Tracy and me to our house. I thought I could help both women get their cars tomorrow, Sherry from the emergency room parking lot, and Tracy from the parking lot at work. Tracy didn't say a word to me as we walked through the door, heading straight to the main bathroom and getting in the shower. She joined me in the living room about 20 minutes later, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She sat down on the sofa and I got out of my chair and joined her, pulling her to me for a big hug. She was breathing raggedly and I could feel her body shaking with sobs. I wanted to ask her why she was without a bra, considering she was supposed to be working with Jacques, but I didn't have the heart to do it at that moment. Instead, I held her quietly for another 20 minutes until she said she was tired and was going to bed. It was midnight, so I decided to go to bed with her. The next morning, after showering and shaving, I offered to take Tracy to the office so she could get a car. Suddenly, she looked like she had been punched in the gut and started stuttering before it took her a while to catch her breath and calm down. Instead, she asked me to take her to Sherry's, and they would take a taxi to the office and pick up some of Jacques' things. Tracy will then take Sherry to the hospital to fill out some paperwork and pick up Jacques' personal belongings. I offered my help, but was quickly rejected. It actually worked out pretty well for me. I needed to find the paramedics who worked last night and get answers to a couple of questions. After dropping Tracy off at Sherry's and getting a brief update on how she was doing, I jumped back in the car and drove straight to the hospital. I quickly managed to find out the names of the paramedics who brought Jacques in yesterday, and they told me where to find them. I found my targets on the fire escape where I was directed, and they remembered me from last night. I looked at the one who handed me Tracy's purse. His name tag said his name was Rob, and asked him directly where the race started. What do you mean? What is it? He asked, suddenly looking at me suspiciously. My wife and Jacques were supposed to work, but you didn't take them to Softel, did you? Isn't that why you called me Cook? Oh, damn it. Oh my God, buddy. I didn't mean anything personal, he said, raising his voice. It's just that we've seen enough of these cases where the two people who checked into the room are not husband and wife, and when shit hits the fan, we're the bad guys. Don't shoot the damn messenger. Calm down, Rob. I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm just trying to get to the truth. I had to look up the meaning of the word cook, and I didn't like what I saw. But I don't think that's your problem. Obviously, this is my problem if you tell me that you picked them up somewhere other than Softel. We picked them up at the Westside Hotel, Rob replied. I think they were doing this for about 15 minutes when the guy just grabbed his chest and fell on your wife. In fact, she had to push him away from her to get to the phone and call 911, and then she gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. He was barely alive when we took him to the emergency room. I had the truth. I didn't need more than that. I thanked them both and left. I could feel them looking at me with pity in their eyes as I left. My head was spinning as I drove home. Tracy was making love to Jacques when he had a heart attack. I wonder how long this has been going on, I thought. Then it dawned on me. In fact, it hit me like a thunderbolt. Our daughter Allison and their daughter Amy were not just similar by coincidence. They were sisters. Tracy has been making love to him for at least 19 years. How could I not have noticed this before? What a fucking gullible idiot I was. She and Jacques worked late at least once a week, sometimes twice, and then had hen parties or parties from time to time. Had she been making love to him all this time? What about the business trips they took together? How could Sherry not know? I admit that I can be an ignorant bastard sometimes, but how can a woman be so ignorant, especially when the girls are so similar? And Sherry was often in the office, Tracy said, dropping in at any time just to say hello to her husband or to her. I thought they were good friends, judging by the way it looked. How could Tracy do this to Sherry? Tracy's car was in the garage when I got home. She was sitting in the living room drinking wine from a glass when I came in. Obviously, the look on my face told her that I was unhappy. What's wrong, honey? What is it? She asked. Although I wanted to behave calmly, but my anger got the better of me and I couldn't help myself. How long have you been making love to Jacques? I blurted out, venom dripping from my voice as I turned up the volume. He's Allison's father, isn't he? Tracy dropped her wine glass as she jumped up from the couch. How could you say such terrible things to me? She screamed, practically lashing out at me. She stopped about a foot away from me, her eyes blazing with lasers, and if looks could kill, I would be dead on the spot. I wasn't going to back down. I was right, and I knew it. I stood my ground, staring into those eyes, but I turned down the volume almost to a whisper when I hissed, "Tell me to kiss your ass, but don't you dare lie to me and tell me I'm wrong. I'll knock your fucking teeth down your throat if you lie to me." Never before in the 20 years of our marriage and our relationship before had I yelled at my wife, let alone threatened to physically harm her. To say that she was shocked would be an understatement. Her mouth opened as if she was going to lie, but then, obviously, she realized that I was serious, and the lie stuck in her throat. She also quickly jumped away from me. Maybe it was because flames were shooting out of my eyes. "You killed him, do you know?" I told her as she sat back down on the couch. ignoring the spilled wine on the carpet. The stress of cheating along with physical activity was probably too much for his heart. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, considering how long you two have been making love. I could tell by the startled expression on her face that I had touched a nerve. She looked at her hands and fidgeted for what seemed like several minutes, but in fact, it probably only took 10 seconds. "Oh my God, do you think I really killed him?" "What is it?" she asked softly. I wonder if Sherry thinks so too. Why would Sherry think that? Unless she knew about you two. Did she know about you two? She knew and approved of it almost from the beginning, Tracy said quietly. Sometimes she even joined us, especially when she went on business trips with us. She always told me that she thought it was right for me to enjoy Jacques for being such an important part of his business success, and she was glad that I took care of him in the office while she took good care of him at home. It was my turn to sit down. I was dizzy and confused. So, I was the only one who didn't know? What about Allison? Allison has known about this for the last 4 years. She's good at it. Oh shit. Does Allison know, and is she good at it? Damn it, I howled. That's not really what I meant. Does Sherry know that Allison is Jacques' daughter? Sherry knows, and she's fine with it. Amy knows too. Well, I understand that you've all had a good laugh at silly old Rick many times. Even my daughter, his daughter, I suppose, knew and didn't tell me. Damn wonderful. I ran out of the house. As a result, I went to a local park and just sat there for a couple of hours, looking into space. Tracy called me on my cell phone a couple of times, but I transferred the calls to voicemail. I just sat and thought. I always thought I was a smart guy, but when it came to Tracy, I was a complete dumbass. I never thought about the fact that she was cheating on me, and I trusted her so completely that I probably missed a bunch of obvious signs, at least for 19 years. So damn ignorant. I wondered if there was anyone else besides Jacques. A whirlwind of thoughts was raging in my brain. I left the park when it started to get dark and drove home. When I entered the house from the garage, I saw Tracy sitting in her usual place with a cup of tea in front of her. She offered me a cup, but I declined and went to my wine cabinet for something stronger. I poured myself a whiskey and sat down in the chair opposite her. I can't even begin to tell you how sorry I am that I hurt you, Tracy said softly, looking down at her hands. I need to know the whole story now, I said, and there was more than a little irritation in my voice. You have to tell me how you could do this to me, saying that you love me. You have to tell me if you've ever really loved me. And did you respect me? Don't you dare doubt my love for you, never! Tracy screamed with urgency in her voice. I've always loved you. I still love you. It's just that I also loved Jacques. Some people think that you can only love one person, but I know that's not true because I've loved two. Don't spare me. Go on, I said decisively. Tracy joined Softal when the company was about a year old. As in many small companies, employees worked long hours and became emotionally close. It was an exciting time for her, and I remembered how she told me about the difficulties during our dates. We had been dating for about a year when she joined the company. As the company became successful and grew, Tracy became, so to speak, Jacques' right-hand man. He was a dynamic leader and the face of the company. It was, in fact, the glue that held everything together. She coped with many tasks perfectly, and Jacques began to depend on her as his other half. At the same time, when the relationship between Tracy and me was heating up outside the office, the relationship between Jacques and Tracy was heating up in the office. She noted that it was almost as if her personal and work lives were running parallel. Although Tracy and Jacques were respectable in front of the rest of the office, she continued, away from the rest, they became even more attached, discussing everything from soup to nuts, from love to politics. She was 24 years old, beautiful, with an athletic build and long blonde hair. He was 34 years old, a well-built man with long, wavy brown hair, a sweet smile, and an almost old-fashioned politeness. Tracy recalled that it was almost natural when they first made love on the leather couch in his office at the end of a long day. Because it seemed so natural, Tracy said she never felt guilty about sleeping with both me and Jacques, even when we got married a year later. It wasn't lust, it was a complete love affair, similar but at the same time different from the one we had with her. But she knew she would never be able to tell me about it because of how I feel about infidelity. She loved us both and wanted it to continue. Although I wasn't told about the affair, Jacques told Sherry about 2 months later. When he and Tracy realized their romance was going to last, he wanted to be completely honest with his wife. who had just given birth to their first child. Sherry and Amy will always hold the biggest place in his heart, Tracy said. Jacques told Sherry, but he wanted to keep a piece of his heart for Tracy. Then Sherry invited Tracy to spend the weekend with Jacques and her. I remembered how she went away for the weekend under the pretext of her mother's illness, and after that weekend gave her blessing to the novel. When Tracy became pregnant a few years later, it was Sherry who took the worried Tracy into her heart, and it was she who decided how the narrative would develop if the child really was from Jacques. Since Jacques and I both had A+ blood, that solved the easiest part. And since I was almost never alone with both girls together, when someone noticed the girls' similarities, Sherry or Tracy almost always made some witty remark. Both women knew that if I had the chance to think about it, I might have suspected something was wrong. Sherry looked at Tracy almost like a younger sister and was actually proud of Jacques' second family, Tracy noted. I sat dumbfounded during Tracy's confession. No, actually a memory, because she was in no way expressing regret for what she had done. She was just recalling events. Tracy stopped talking and looked at me as if she expected me to say something. The only thing I could think of at that moment was to ask if she and Jacques took a break when we first got married and made love almost every day of the week. She looked confused and looked away before finally answering no. It was such an exciting time in my life. I had two handsome men who loved me and desired me, and I was extremely horny all the time, she said. On the days when Jacques and I were making love, I always tried to wash up properly down there, in case we were going to make love too. Yes, sometimes you had sloppy seconds, but I tried to keep them to a minimum, and I never let you eat me after Jacques and I made love. Awfully considerate of you, I muttered. The funny thing is, after all these years, I've never really compared the two of you in a loving way, she continued. You were both good lovers, kind and considerate, and about the same height. It wasn't the best love with Jacques, just different because of who each of you was. I have to admit that I was somewhat comforted by the fact that it wasn't just lust with a big goofy stranger. But at the same time, I was hurt to the core by her admission that she loved him as much as she loved me. I was raised to believe in one partner, one soulmate for each of us. And while I may have been the one who got most of her intimacy, there was another one I shared with. Tracy put down her tea and looked into my eyes, trying to look into my soul. I didn't have an answer to her unasked question, and I didn't have any wise words. I put the bottle in the closet, put the glass in the sink, and headed upstairs to bed. I knew without a doubt that I would not be able to sleep that night. Tracy came to the bed about 5 minutes later and lay down, curled up behind me. I pretended to be asleep so that I wouldn't even have to say goodnight to her. I got up at my usual 5 a.m., completed my morning routine, and went to work. Tracy was still in bed when I left, which means she wasn't planning on going to Softal. I suppose she and Sherry will need to figure out what happens next when Jacques is gone. That's their problem. Obviously, I needed to deal with my own problem. Work has always been a source of comfort to me when something went wrong in my life, and I hoped that this trend would continue. I work for Mayoni Pharmaceuticals, where I am the vice president of sales. Even though I am 45 years old, I belong to a new breed in this industry. I'm a chemist by training, so unlike most of the guys in my industry who lead sales, I really know how products are made and what exactly they do. I even participated in the creation of one of our products, Cock Crazitol, a pill that helps reduce female libido for those who are too excited. It was a great product for us, and I made a good profit from it for myself. I also get a very good salary, and with Tracy's salary, we did very well. An upscale house in a trendy neighborhood, 2 good cars, a great vacation. Neither of us will suffer financially when we get divorced. Well, that's what I thought about. A terrible word with the letter R. I hadn't thought about it until this moment, probably because it was a blur in my mind from the moment I found out that Tracy was cheating. Since Allison went to college and left home, we really have no reason to stay together. Aside from the fact that Tracy ripped out my heart, there shouldn't be anything special about it. My boss, Arnold Kramer, and I have been working together for 18 years. After 5 years of working as a chemist at another pharmaceutical company, I met Arnie at an industry convention and we talked about a lot of things. He was the one who said that I should try my hand at sales and then offered me a place in his company. I liked the idea and I went to work for him. Arnie was 100% right in his assessment of my skills, and we both benefited greatly from it. And not only do we work well together, but he turned out to be a damn good guy, and we formed what I hope has become a close friendship for life. Arnie has been married to his wife Lauren for about 30 years. He has 2 adult children and 5 grandchildren. He's 52 years old, and he acts like he's 30. Lots of energy, sharp as a nail. And he's not only smart, but he's not afraid to hire other smart people. I'd like to think I'm one of them. Arnie seemed crushed when I told him that Tracy had cheated on me and I was going to divorce her. He asked me if I was sure she was really cheating, and I said yes. He didn't insist on details, and I didn't tell him anything. We'll talk in due course, and he knew it. Nevertheless, he reached into his filing cabinet and pulled out the card of the law firm representing the interests of the company. Arnie is incredibly loyal to the people who do good work for him, and he trusted the guys from this company, who had a small divorce department. He told me to use whatever time I needed, but I assured him that I would only need to spend a few hours here and there. After all, it should be a simple matter, I noted. We lived in a guilt-free state. We both wanted to do the right thing by Allison, and we both had our own retirement accounts that each of us could keep. We could split the proceeds for the house. God, I missed that by a mile. When I got home from work that evening, Tracy was dressed up for the party. Dinner was on the table, my favorite spaghetti supreme, and she opened a nice bottle of Merlot. Everything looked so good that I didn't have the heart to remind her that it was Jacques who was a fan of wine, and I like my spirits to be distilled. I think it's hard to remember everything about both of your husbands under pressure. Tracy was chatty as usual while we ate, acting as if nothing had changed between us. I waited about 10 minutes before putting an end to this charade, finally using those famous 4 words that no spouse would ever want to hear. We need to talk. No, we don't need that, she practically snapped at me. I must admit I was shocked by her response and her tone. I caught her and she confessed that she had a long-term affair with her boss. She knew how I felt about infidelity. How could she think that I would keep her? I was hoping that we could at least talk like civilized adults before I serve you, I told her as calmly as I could. You can do whatever you like to be served, but I won't give you a divorce, she said with more than a hint of annoyance in her voice. The point is you love me, and I love you, and I won't let you go. I will fight it every step of the way. You're being stupid and you're going to ruin the best thing you've ever had, and all because your pride is hurt. I started to answer, but she interrupted me. Until you found out about Jacques and me, did I ever give you any reason to doubt my love for you? Have I ever neglected you in any way? You absolutely got as much good love as you wanted, and I took care of you in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally. Aren't we each other's best friends? If you hadn't found out about it by this unfortunate accident, you would have gone to your grave loving me completely until your last breath. You would never understand anything. Can't we just get back to it? No, because I found out. You don't love me as much as you say you do, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to give yourself to another man, body and soul. You knew it was wrong, so you hid it from me. I don't call 2 decades of cheating love. It's bad enough that you've been making love to another man for 2 decades, but you admit to me that you love him. You were as close to him as you were to me. What kind of love is this? Forget about love for a moment. Can't you see that every ounce of love you gave him, you stole from me? I've had more than enough love for the 2 of you, Tracy shouted back at me. He was manly enough to understand that. But I spared you, so I never told you about it. And now you're proving that I was right. Manly enough? Was I not manly enough because I wouldn't let you have a love partner and a half man on the side? This is absolute crap. I wasn't stupid enough to let you do this to me voluntarily. So you made the decision for yourself, completely for yourself. It was all about what you wanted. And I got it. And believe me, I have no doubt that if I hadn't found out about it, I would have gone to my grave a completely happy man, and the biggest idiot in the world. And you could just write this on my fucking tombstone. Here lies Rick Avondale, the luckiest idiot in the world. He thought life was wonderful because he had no idea that his wife had 2 husbands. The service and funeral took place 3 days later, on Monday. I was not present. I got up just like any other morning and went to work. When I got home, Tracy and Allison were in the kitchen, still in the morning clothes they had worn at the funeral. I went up to my daughter, who came from college, and tried to hug her. After all, she hadn't been home for about 2 months. I said tried because the hug never materialized. At first, she recoiled from my touch, then turned her back on me and walked away, crying softly. Tracy put her hand on my forearm and gently shook her head. Under normal circumstances, I would have taken the hint and left it as it was, but these were no longer normal circumstances. I literally growled. I went upstairs to the bedroom, got enough clothes for a few days, took a toothbrush and hygiene supplies, and left. Tracy started blowing up my phone almost from the minute I came out. I've allowed all calls to go to voicemail. However, I had to give Allison credit for one thing. Unlike her mother, she didn't pretend that everything was going to be okay. At some point, she decided that I was an asshole in this play, and she was going to make me pay. Well, if she was going to make me pay by ripping out my heart, she'd accomplished her mission. Not only was she not my child biologically, but she just made it absolutely clear that she was no longer my child emotionally. It just got worse by the minute. On Tuesday, I took advantage of my free time, went to the bank and divided all the accounts into hers and mine. I closed our credit cards, opened a new one in my own name only, and made an appointment at the law firm that Arnie recommended. They squeezed me in on Thursday. I hadn't slept for 3 days when I went to see my lawyer on Thursday. I swear to God, but his name was Mike Squishy. I was hoping he was a much better lawyer than his name suggests. I thought there really wasn't much to discuss. I explained the matter to him in detail and told him that I wanted to separate from my wife as soon as possible. I also told him that I wanted an alimony claim to be filed against Jacques' estate. Well, if Allison was no longer my child in any sense of the word, then let her real father pay for her upbringing. I'm tired of being a fool, I told Mike. Mike said he didn't see any problems with that, but if Tracy was really adamant about not getting a divorce, the judge might order a mandatory consultation, and it might take a while. I told him to do it, and on Monday of the following week, Tracy was handed the documents at Softal. I assume she was served at 10:07 a.m., because at 10:08 a.m. our receptionist said that an angry Tracy was on line 3. For a week, I didn't answer any of Tracy's calls and texts on my cell phone, and I instructed the secretary to send her calls directly to my voicemail, which they did. But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever, so one day I told Marlene, our senior secretary, to put her through to me when she called. You are an incredible fool. I hung up the phone as soon as she finished her first curse. Phone number 2 came in 15 seconds later. Don't you dare hang that fucking thing. I hung up the phone again, wondering how long it would take her to realize that she had to be polite if she wanted to talk to me. It took a little longer to make phone call number 3. When I answered, she was practically whispering that she was trying so hard to control herself. You won the first round. We need to talk, she said. That's just great, I said as cheerfully as I could. Call my lawyer, Mike Squishy, at the number I'll send you and make an appointment with us. You might also want to bring your own lawyer with you. This could speed up the process. The meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Until then, I continued to live in a nearby motel, going into my old house to cut the grass and occasionally pick up my mail and other things. When Tracy first saw me drive up to the house, she tried to greet me like her long-lost husband and started hugging me in the driveway, but I physically pushed her away from me and entered the house. You didn't have to tell the world about our problems right there in the driveway, did you? She said. Hey, if I'm such a fool, divorce me, I replied calmly. The meeting with the lawyers took place on Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. As always, gentlemen, I let Tracy state her arguments first, the ones that she totally loves me and was just leaving a little space in her heart for Jacques. And of course, now that he was dead, everything would be just mine all the time. Are you ready to throw away 20 wonderful years because of this? She asked me. Did our love mean so little to you? No, precisely because our love meant so much to me. We have to end this marriage, I replied. You have completely taken over my heart and have viciously deceived me to get it. How can I not see this as a complete betrayal of trust, the very foundation of marriage? You knew you were doing the wrong thing, so you betrayed my trust to get exactly what you wanted, both of us physically and emotionally. But he knew and accepted it, and I was tricked into it. For some reason, no one offered to use his wife. This divorce is not on my conscience. It's about your selfishness and betrayal. I would never put up with sharing you physically with another man. But sharing your love with another man is not all. It hurts more than if you had just had a cheap, tasteless affair with a cool stud. You loved this guy, and she used this guy, and even had a child with him. Just because I didn't know, it didn't fix the situation. You both stole from me. It's a good thing he died of a heart attack that day, because if he hadn't, I would have shot him. Tracy gasped when I made my last statement. I was already in tears. You know, in all this time, you've never once said that you regret cheating on me, I continued. You apologized for hurting me, and I know you're sorry you got caught, but I don't think you're the least bit sorry for what you did. Rick, I know you can do your part. Don't go through this divorce, she said. My part? It was our marriage, Tracy. There shouldn't have been a part of me and a part of you. It was supposed to be just us. Forever. Mike looked at Tracy's lawyer and said, I think we're done here. Your client must sign the documents and return them to us. Tracy's lawyer, a stern, middle-aged African-American woman, nodded grimly and held out her hand to shake Mike's. Over the next 2 weeks, some minor details were sorted out, and about 3 months after that, we officially divorced. 2 days after the divorce became official, I got Mike to file a lawsuit against Jacques' estate for what were essentially child support and college expenses, although it sounded better when Mike used legal language. I probably wouldn't have done this if Allison hadn't made it clear to me after the funeral that she didn't want anything to do with me anymore. I raised this child as my own for 18 years, and was that the respect I was being given? But I think she had 4 years to think about it after Tracy brought her up to speed, and in her eyes I was no better than a blockhead. So 14 years of complete fatherly love have gone down the drain. So no, I wasn't offended at all when Mike suggested replacing the lost respect with real dollars, $1 million to be exact. I liked Mike's attitude. I was expecting a phone call from Sherry when she was served, but instead I got a call from Tracy. Sherry probably thought I'd take the message coming from Tracy better, even though she was wrong. Was it just another way to get back at me? Are you suffering for money? Tracy asked when I picked up the phone. Well, hello to you too, Mrs. Avondale. It's so sweet of you to call. It's not that I don't know why she's calling. You know that makes you look like a complete jerk, right? She commented. Do you understand that I have been raising and spending my resources on another man's child for 18 years, while you, Sherry, and Jacques were laughing well at my expense? And this other man's child now thinks I'm nothing more than a dumbass? I don't give a shit what any of you think. I hung up without saying goodbye. I guess Tracy expressed to Sherry my position and what a stubborn bastard I can be when I'm right about something. Because after her lawyer tried to bargain with Mike, she just wrote me a check for $1 million. And as it turned out, a couple of months later, Sherry could easily afford that $1 million because she sold Softal to a Japanese company for $8 million. Since Jacques was no longer there to run the business, it was probably a good business move. That was probably the end of the story, but as the old reporter Paul Harvey used to say, and now the rest of the story. 2 days after the sale of Softal, $2 million was transferred to my account in the Cayman Islands. This was my fee for helping Nakatomi Lieutenant obtain Softal for 9 months after Nakatomi's anonymous lawyer and I signed a deal stating that no matter how it happened and what role I would actually play in it, if Nakatomi acquired Softal by a certain date, I would get paid for it. If the acquisition did not take place by the specified date, the transaction would have been terminated. So right now you're probably wondering what role I played in the deal with Softal. It's a little complicated, but the bottom line is that I wasn't completely honest with you earlier in this story. Most of this story was based on the truth, but some of it was based on what could have been an Oscar-winning movie directed by me, a guy who seemed completely clueless. Let me explain. In fact, I was an ignorant bastard about a month before Jacques died. Then I was approached by a certain Nakatomi lieutenant lawyer who wanted me to help him make a deal with Jacques for Softal. Why do you need my help, other than the fact that my wife is Jacques' right handman? I asked innocently enough. Because we know that you are a smart person, and we believe that you will rise to the challenge and receive a reward for outsmarting the asshole who has been cuckolding you behind your back for years, the lawyer said. To say that I was shocked would be an understatement. Tracy cheated on me, and this guy from Japan knew about it? Are you kidding me? It turns out that Nakatomi Lieutenant has been investigated by several companies, and when these guys do research, they do everything except inspect the body cavities. They easily learned about Jacques and Tracy, as well as how Sherry and both daughters fit into this story. They rightly assumed that I would be more than willing to do everything in my power to help them. But it had to be done quickly because they were looking at several other software companies, and I had to complete the order within 9 months. However, first they showed me their evidence of Tracy's infidelity. They had photos, videos, phone calls, travel receipts, everything. I had everything in my hands to bury the two of them, and then they motivated me. I earn very well, and I didn't necessarily need the money, but they offered me $2 million to help them take the company away from Jacques. Damn it. At that moment, I would have helped them for free. But I wasn't going to tell them that. I just needed to think about my plan of action, and I had to make sure that the money would come to me after the divorce so that I wouldn't have to share it, since we live in a guilt-free state. But first I needed to calm down so as not to give myself away. My honest first thought was to wait for their next date, break in and shoot them both. But I didn't like being Bubba's cellmate for the rest of my life. So I had to act cool and keep acting like I don't know a damn thing, something I've been doing for 20 years. So what difference does it make if I play along a little longer? I told Arnie what I found out about Tracy and Jacques, but I didn't tell him how I found out. One day we stayed up late with a bottle of Don Julio tequila, throwing out ideas about what I should do. Finally, after drinking about half of the bottle, he looked at me seriously and said, "Damn it, son. Isn't it just shit that the guy who invented cock crazidol tolerates his wife cheating with another man? You should have slipped her some of this, Rick." That's when the light bulb came on, although I didn't say anything to Arnie for obvious reasons. Not for her, I thought to myself. I should have slipped that fool some of that stuff. Hey, wait a minute. You can fuck 2 birds with 1 stone. One of the really good things about cock crazitol is that, unlike most other medications, it doesn't have many contraindications. In fact, there is only one thing. This drug should not be taken by men at all, because although it calms the female libido, for some reason it causes a spike in blood pressure in men and can lead to a fatal heart attack. I just needed to give some of the drug to Jacques. Jacques and I both belong to the same golf course, and we sometimes play together with 2 other guys. I organized a 4-man game for us next Saturday, with a stop at a restaurant to have a delicious lunch after the first 9 holes. The first 9 holes were good, and we had about 90 minutes for lunch and drinks before our second 9. You have to remember that I'm a pretty good salesman, so while we were sitting there having lunch and drinking, I looked at Jacques and casually asked, "Hey buddy, are you okay? You look a little exhausted." The other 2 guys and I were about 10 years younger than Jacques, and he knew it. So yes, the question affected him a little bit depressingly. I could see the wheels turning in his head when I said we could postpone the next half for about 30 minutes to give him some rest. "No, I'm just a little tired, but we don't have to carry anything for me, I'm fine," he replied. Actually, I didn't think he looked tired at all, but now I was playing on his insecurity that he was the oldest guy in the band. "I've got just what you need, buddy," I said, pulling out a small bag of unmarked white pills from the front left pocket of my trousers. "Something that I keep just for myself and drink every day with lunch. Helps me get through the rest of the day with ease." I handed Jacques a bag of 5 pills. "Take these for the next few days, and if you like them, I'll bring you more the next time we meet for a game." Jacques took one of the pills out of the bag, put it in his mouth and washed it down with bourbon and ice. He struck his chest like a monkey and let out a Tarzan cry. "Come on, guys, I'm as awake as ever," he shouted cheerfully. In fact, for a few minutes, he probably really felt a surge of strength. An increase in blood pressure pumps you up a bit, which is why athletes take heart drugs for doping. But there are too many good things. And for those who are wondering why I gave him a small bag and not a bottle of pills or a box of pills, the reason is that when he finishes taking the pills, he will just throw the bag away and will not store it so that it will not be found in his pocket in case someone rummaged in his clothes when the inevitable happens on Wednesday night. For those who will pay attention now, these 5 pills will last until Wednesday, which was an ordinary night for the Jacques Tracy Love Festival. Combine a man's blood pressure, which is already rising because of love with a beautiful woman and not with his wife, with medications that cause blood pressure to rise and jump, and you will get a heart attack, most likely fatal. But since it looked like a normal heart attack, and since we live in a small town without a large homicide unit, the only way to investigate this is if something looks suspicious or inappropriate. Therefore, I tried to play my role of a newly minted cuckold to the maximum, acting exactly as I did when I found out about this affair a month earlier. I must say, I was even impressed with my acting talents myself. 2 days after the money arrived in my account and was immediately transferred to another account, I invited Arnie and his wife to a big luxurious dinner, ostensibly to thank Arnie for being a great boss and supporting me in a difficult moment. He didn't need to know that this was actually done in order to sow the seeds of my revenge. With the disappearance of Jacques from the lives of both women, the bond between Tracy and Sherry weakened significantly, especially when Sherry had time to think about the fact that Jacques died practically on Tracy. I was also told that the fact that Tracy couldn't convince me to drop the claim against the inheritance because of the alimony refund made Sherry very angry, although I don't think she realized that Tracy didn't receive any of this money, because by that time we were already divorced. Sherry fired Tracy shortly after she paid me the money, and the guys from Nakatomi Limited apparently spread the rumor of an affair between Jacques and Tracy in their world, effectively ending Tracy's career in business administration. It's probably not a good thing when the boss dies in bed with you, or rather on you. However, don't cry too much about Tracy. She won't be queuing for bread for a while, and she will be able to help her daughter. Yes, I said her daughter. Allison made it very clear to me that after Jacques died, she no longer wanted anything to do with me, refusing me not only once, but several times. I guess that's what I get for raising her, providing for her, coaching her football team, and attending all her dance concerts. Well, I guess I won't make that mistake again. I guess I'm doing pretty well for a guy who lost the love of his life after 20 years. It took me a while, but eventually I started dating again. I'm just not sure I'll ever be able to fully trust a woman again, and I'm not sure I'll ever be able to find one that matches what I thought I had with Tracy. But let's not forget that I'm worth about $5 million, so I retired, and now I'm only working on special projects for Mayone. Maybe one day I will invent a pill that will allow ignorant husbands to immediately detect a cheating wife. It would really benefit humanity.